Yep. And we're back after a month or something.
I'm losing track.
2 months.
We're now going to do this every other month, right? I think is do a podcast every other month.
Well, that's after we talked about doing it more often, maybe even daily. And
Yes, that's silly.
that was madness.
It's like daily.
No wonder Roger just looked at me like, "Are you in the same like
That was
planet
precious.
that I'm on right now?" Hey, just got back from Colorado. Can you tell? I'm in full Bronco mode.
Speaking of the NFL, trivia question. I know you like these.
I love these. This is where Roger's so good.
All right. So the Patriots length of time, teams number of years since they've been in the playoffs. So I'm going to give you this. The four longest, one is 14 years, one is 8 years, two or 6 years. Go. The 14, one
Since they've been in the
in the
playoffs.
playoffs. Since they've been in the playoffs, one is 14 years, one is 8 years, 2 or 6 years.
Cleveland Browns, Jets,
Jets are 14.
Commanders.
So Jets are the worst, so they're 14.
What, did you have to say Jets are the worst? That's
They're in our division. We love to say Jets are the worst.
although Aaron Rodgers did sort of kind of put them in a bad place before the very first game when he said, if we don't win this game, it's same old Jets. I'm like, is that where you're going to start the year? Because they did went on to lose the game, and sure enough, it's the same. I mean, he was right. It was true. It was accurate. I just don't want to slip that into the ass. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. So, okay, I'm going.
I'll tell you guys, so Jets are 14 years since they've been in the playoffs.
The Browns, it's been a long time, hasn't
It
it?
is not.
They got to the playoffs?
Right. They're not even one of the sixes. Yes.
Well, the Broncos has been six, probably.
8.
Eight.
They're the second. I was stunned.
Yeah. Because they haven't had terrible teams.
No.
But not enough to
They're the second, and they played a tough division.
playing a very tough division.
So, second most, Denver, totally surprised by that. And then there are two teams that have been at 6 years.
So I got
And then everyone else, I think, is like 4 years or less.
the Broncos, the Jaguars.
I get them. You know what? I get it's either the Panthers or the Jaguars. I think it's the Panthers.
It's those expansion teams.
Right. I think
Then maybe the Panthers.
one of those two, and then another that surprised me. Only that the last time they're in the playoffs, they went to the Super Bowl and played the Patriots.
The Giants?
Atlanta.
I didn't think Atlanta made the playoffs since 1998.
They haven't made the playoffs since in 6 years, but I think that's the year they were up 28-3 on the Patriots.
That's a painful.
In that Super Bowl.
And,
But your team looks like they're going to change that this year.
and I got something for you in Denver that was a surprise.
What?
It's a gift for Roger.
Oh my goodness!
There's a little hint. Open up your gift, Roger. You're gonna love this.
It's probably something like,
This is early Christmas. I couldn't take it anymore.
oh my gosh, I love that.
Isn't that great?
That is.
It's the great thing when you shop Goodwill in these upscale Denver suburbs.
Yes.
Like all these shirts were like brand new. It was like crazy.
What?
Yeah. So you're gonna love that. You're gonna look good, and it's with the hopes that your team becomes a football team again.
Well, the great news, like you guys, is we have our quarterback.
Yeah.
The best news about the Patriots right now is Drake May, and
Meanwhile, and you got a coach. I think.
well, we're just going to have to see how that.
Roger, it's an interesting thing. So when I look at Alabama and when I look at the Patriots, I'm wondering if their current coaches are what I call the buffer. It's the buffer coach.
Oh,
You end up with the greatest minds,
yeah.
and Tom Landry leaves the Cowboys. You have a sacrificial lamb for 4 years. It's the buffer coach that just goes in and does the best they can. But even like immediately when Saban leaves, it's like, bless their hearts. Clemson, you realize Clemson knocked Alabama in the playoffs.
I was
Field goal, which made me super happy. Don't hate me. But to me, the two big games for Tennessee every year are not Georgia and like Vanderbilt and whatever. They are, to me, the rivalries are Florida and Alabama. We beat Florida and Alabama, it's a good year by me. And frankly, I didn't want to face Alabama a second time.
right.
I'm actually okay playing Georgia a second time. Now, they're crazy good, I mean, but if we win our playoff game, which I think we can, Ohio State, bless their hearts, they can't win the big one. Not that Tennessee's proven that they can either. But then we would go to the Rose Bowl and play Oregon, and I'm like, we're going to run for the money. Now, I haven't seen Oregon play. I just know that the two times that Ohio State had someone on their schedule to play, Oregon and Michigan, they so yeah, I'm excited about that matchup. I was in full Tennessee regalia on Sunday
By the way,
for the playoff announcements.
for our listeners
Yes.
who aren't, Bruce for Christmas got me a Patriots
Yeah, you just changed it into it.
headed hoodied sweatshirt.
And the hoodie is important. Why, Todd?
Nice.
The hoodie is because you are, now if you cut off the sleeves,
Right,
you are Bill Belichick.
although this was technically a gray one.
This was great.
Gray, right. But yes.
So you're gonna just knock it
Oh,
right
I'm styling
after that?
Yeah.
You're styling and smiling.
Yeah, I like it.
Good times.
Hey, I had a fun moment yesterday
Well, tell me about your fun moment.
that, well, it has Christmas implications for you as well, but
Does it?
long story short,
Which is hard for Roger.
that's true. So my feed comes up Huntsville Walmart closing. And I guess they've got to get the word, they've got to post it. So people, employees, different ones that there's now a law. Anyway, so I look and say, oh, it's this one on such and such a street. And I said, I know where that is. And I just had to say, I said, if they're starting to discount things, they're going to close this store at a point.
Your estate sale, eBay mind kicked in.
So I went over there, walked in the door. Everything is half off. Everything's 50% off.
When was this?
Yesterday.
Dang, that's already half gone then.
Well, and it had started Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I would later learn. I wish I had known Saturday. Now I still did very well. I bought you some Chardonnay, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Some
Love it.
because everything
Things half off.
everything was half off. So I stocked up on all kinds of goodies
Looks like I picked a bag where you can stop sniffing eucalyptus.
and sniffing Chardonnay.
No, that helps my cold. When I had the 17-day cold from Chile, which is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, it was just the longest, couldn't get rid of it cold in the world. By the way, one more thing about Alabama before we talk about the state of Alabama, not the football team.
State of Alabama,
So
where we both live.
we fly back from Colorado. I get healed from all the head stuff in Colorado. Very dry air there, lovely. Just start feeling good finally after about day 3 there. Roger, we're driving back from Atlanta and we're going over Sand Mountain. We go by the sign that says "Welcome to Alabama," and even my car says "Welcome to Alabama," and all of a sudden drainage starts. I start
Your eyes start
draining.
watering.
I'm like, this state is killing me.
Bruce,
It's killing me.
Joy has the exact same. Like we drove back from North Carolina Thanksgiving, and it's like literally, she gets into the state, her eyes start watering. It's so funny. Funny
It's
because
the most pollen-infested state in the United States. I mean, it's ridiculous because everything comes down from the wherever and stalls against the Appalachian Mountains and just stays. They call it the Valley of the Tennessee Valley, the Valley of the Sick Head. That's what the Indians called it.
Valley of the Sick. You're making that.
I'm not making that up. That's true. It
What's
was
the Indian name for Valley of Sick Head? Alabama.
actually, the name Alabama means thicket clear, which is kind of thicket clear. Thicket clearer, like shrub cutter.
Oh, like your name.
Yeah, like keeping the shrub.
Keeper.
Keeping a shrub keeper. But they should have, I think their secondary name, their fun name, their nickname for it is the Valley of the Sick Head. which I think was no, that was not it. There was some Eastern stuff going on there.
Some stuff that doesn't need to happen ever again.
Never needs to happen on a podcast again. So on to important things. What's God teaching Roger in this season of your life?
Oh gosh. Well, that's too broad a question. I don't.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
it. Means you can't remember. What did you talk about this morning on your Facecast? How about we narrow it down?
Let's see. Well, I did end up. Well, I've been thinking a lot about. This was actually yesterday's video, but I've been thinking a lot about. Okay, so Psalm 19, which is just beautiful. It's a fascinating psalm.
Remind me, Psalm
So it
19.
opens up, the heavens declare the glories of God, and just all the God's
Memorize part of that.
Right.
Maybe the whole thing.
And then it's good to memorize. In fact, the last part,
Yeah, we did memorize that in school.
I would say the last part, we need to pray every single day.
And the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day utter the speech, night unto night unto knowledge. This is interesting. I can remember pieces of it because I memorized it.
Well, I'm trying to remember what is 8 and 19, because there's
Okay. Well, I remember Psalm 19 because I had to.
So Psalm 19, right? There's and I think you're right. But then it goes into the law of the Lord is perfect, and
Reviving
giving
the
light to the
soul.
eye, reviving the soul, whatever. But then it goes to this, which is fascinating. Then you have the psalmist, right, who's saying, who can discern his hidden faults?
Hmm.
Who can discern his keep me from willful sins, forgive me of my hidden faults. And then you kind of finish up, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. And I was just reflecting on.
It's a great song.
No, it's so much richness in there.
Marlene and I were reading Psalm 38 this morning. Sin is ever before me. It's a different
Yep.
vibe.
But the contrast, and this is significant, he talks about willful sin. So there's stuff I know, it's obvious.
Right.
There's sins, dare I say, that are provable. I can see an action, or I can hear there's a certain thing.
That in any court of law, they would go, yeah, Roger did that.
Right. So there's sins that are obvious, and there's sins that are subtle.
Yeah.
There's sins that are provable. There are sins that are indiscernible.
There are sins that are exposed, and there are sins that are hidden.
Now,
using the psalmist word.
Which do we hear more sermons about?
The exposed ones,
Right.
the provable ones,
The provable ones.
the visible ones.
Yes.
Everyone can see that you did that ones.
These are the ones the Pharisees focused on. These are the ones the church we grew up in. And honestly, I think most anybody in every generation culture, they focus on the provable. But you get into fascinating question, like you're looking at Jesus' words and the words of the apostle, and actually the pages of the Bible, which of them may be more serious?
Well, and Jesus would always talk about cleaning the inside of the cup.
Yes.
He was like all of the things that all of the behaviors he actually argued, the adulteries, the other visible, provable sins. He said those all begin in the heart. So you need to watch your heart. Yeah, that's interesting.
But that phrase, who can discern?
Hmm.
And it's this great question because I think about the sins that you can't discern. Now, I love the fact, we've talked about it before, I love the fact that one of the 10 Commandments is don't covet.
Right.
Can't prove it.
Unless I say it, you don't know.
Right.
Because if I take it, that's now stealing, which is a different game.
So I think about all the different kinds of sins that are in that subtle.
Yeah.
The heart, their arrogance and pride, self-sufficiency, greed, lust, love of money, lovers of pleasure more than God, judgmentalism.
Yeah. Is that a problem?
I judge that it is.
I judge that it is.
Um,
You discern that it is.
yes, that's the right word. We don't use the word judge.
Now, if we say judge, then it's judging.
Even the lack of mercy, I think the different kinds of things. So Jesus, the biggest warning seemed to be about the sins that are hardest to see. And what hit me was one of the biggest examples of arrogance is thinking I can read my own heart. What I realized is all these things. Oh, here's another one: respecter of persons.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the racism camp, is where I can I can believe a different story. I can believe a little better story. I can give more benefit of the doubt to this group over that group, over this gender than this, whatever this. Well, here's the thing. There's an arrogance that, because I'll hear people say, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm racist. There's no way I'm greedy. There's no way I'm arrogant. There's no way. And maybe the most profound sense of arrogance is the idea
that there's no way.
I can discern the heart.
Yeah.
You can't.
Right.
So you can't discern my heart, but I can. And I've heard some of the strongest language at times, I think, and even felt this in my own heart, about, oh, I know my heart. The idea, the comical idea, oh, I absolutely know my heart better than anybody else.
I know part of what's going on in my heart.
Yes.
But I love the idea. So it's interesting because Marlene and I are both reading and praying together in the mornings now, which is lovely.
I love that.
But we know what I prayed this morning for both of us was forgive us of our sins, known and unknown.
Yes.
The reason I say unknown is we're into that category that you're talking about.
Exactly.
And then I prayed, God, expose those areas like that we're not saying. I hadn't thought about how it related to
No,
but that's
praying Psalm 19. Praying Psalm 19.
if I'm doing the way I said, if we're doing anything displeasing to you that we're not aware of, just make that aware of us.
Yeah.
Not from a standpoint of shame or guilt, but gosh, I just want to stay in that space where I'm sinning against God and not even recognizing or realizing it. So I was thinking, because I want to make this practical for me, I realized like the unknown sin, the one that I can sometimes discern, but sometimes not, is this subtle thing about superiority.
Yeah.
And while you're talking, I just realized you can't ever have genocide at the end of the road unless it first begins with the subtle inside sin of superiority. I am superior, you are inferior.
Right.
And you go far enough down that road, then the person can end up at genocide.
Yep.
Well, they're so inferior, we have to eliminate.
Well, and isn't this, I think, probably touching on what Jesus, when he started about hating in your heart?
Yeah.
You're concerned about murder, which is the active, provable, I can see you killed that person. Okay, that was not good.
Yeah.
And Jesus is pointing to part that you even see where you're starting to despise, and part of hate is putting people in a different category.
Yep.
They are worth less. They are, again, we've talked about once you demonize them, well, you can treat demons any way you want. Once you monsterize people, well, you've got to actually eradicate monsters and demons and monsters them out. And so this heart idea, yes, that my brokenness isn't as bad as that person's, my hypocrisy, my deception, my heart isn't like that person's heart. Well, Jesus said, well, like if you don't let me work on that, that's gonna lead to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we can't. Those are the ones that are so hard to see.
And two things I would say to that. Then we have to be open to the Spirit of God revealing those things first. Just open to.
Yes.
Show me what those things are.
And let me say just real fast on that. This is why I think the prayer is so important. Just to name every day, I don't see it all.
Yep.
Just to say, who can discern? Roger, I can't discern it all. That's the prayer. The prayer is, God, I can't discern it all. Help me see what you want me to see today.
Yeah.
Okay, press on.
Well, no, I'm just saying open Holy Spirit. But I realize on the other hand, what that means is we have to be open to community, to people,
Yes.
because often the way that God will expose those things will come through other people, not through the judgment of other people, potentially through but through the loving kindness of other people. I was thinking, so one of the stories I shared last week, and we were having a prayer time. And what they do in some of these prayer times is they just invite Jesus into that memory, and which is a beautiful thing to do. It's fascinating. Harder for some people, easy for me because my mind loves fantasy and loves the creativity of it. And so imagining Jesus in that space was not hard for me to do. But
Some past memories, some past
some past memories, and we're just like, right, what changes about that memory? I can think of some elder meetings that I'm like, had I seen Jesus in the room, I would have probably felt differently about that meeting. You see what I'm saying? Because Jesus is going to have eyes of compassion. And it's just interesting, very good. But one of the things that came out of that, I prayed through the story of there was a season in my life, because I've talked to you before about this, but one of the things that I've struggled to do in the past 12 years is trust people. Because if you have things that happen in your life that where trust is breached, whether intentionally or unintentionally, you start pulling back. You're like, I'm not sure I can trust, I trust Roger 95%. Roger gets a high level of trust. Jesus is the only one that, whether that's founded or not.
I'm concerned for you.
But what happened was I went back to that time where when we first planted Rocket City Community Church, Bobby and Roy and I went on a pastoral retreat. And we did exactly what you're alluding to, which is we gave the other permission to speak into a hidden fault, a fault that we couldn't discern. We call it the fatal flaws exercise.
Yeah.
Where we're going to expose to our friends, to my two friends, I'm going to share what I believe my fatal flaw is, but I'm also going to give them space. Didn't realize how excited they were about that.
Me next.
Where they're going to say, here's what we think your fatal flaw is. All that to say, I thought mine was this. They're like, yours is pride. We think it's pride. And they said that very carefully, and it was not a shaming thing at all. But a couple of things I realized about that. Number one, it was the first time in my life with two other human beings that I had practiced what I would call unreasonable trust. Unreasonable. Doesn't make I only known Roy for a little over a year. I only known Bobby for 7 months.
Wow.
But I practiced unreasonable trust. I'm gonna because that to me that's like one of the most vulnerable things you can say to another human. I want you to speak into my life, not just affirm me, but I want you to speak into my life what you see as a problem or a point of concern. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I haven't had unreasonable trust in years. And it's almost like you have a certain number of years, enough years in church ministry, your trust erodes.
That did not work out well.
Roger.
Well, let's not do that again.
Well, but I realized that had become sort of my subconscious mantra. Let's not do that again. Note to self, check the box, don't go there again. Because I realized there was 2 times in my life, in particular, 2 times in my life where I confessed something that I believed to be wrong, problematic, not pleasing to God. And the people that I shared it with, not all of them, but some of them, it went totally south. And it went to judgment, and it went to assuming the worst, and it just was, when I look back on my life, and it's part of the work that we did in Colorado last week, it was just going back to see if there's any historic hurts that are sabotaging your present. And I realized, oh yeah, I stopped wanting to live confessionally, which takes trust. If I'm gonna live confessionally with other believers, even the confess your faults one to another so that you can be healed.
Yes.
Then I have to be willing to trust them. But anyway, long story short, I realized you can't give that trust to everyone, but all of us need people in our life that we trust unreasonably and say, Roger, I give you permission to speak into my life, not just to speak blessing and affirmation, which I very much want and enjoy, but also to say, hey, this concerns me.
Yeah.
Not from a space of judgment, from a space of love. So I give you that permission, not right now because we're live, but I want to get back. Here's what I realized midweek last week, I came to this point, I'm like, I'm ready to trust again. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Does that affect my relationship to Marlena? I'm willing to trust her again. Now, sometimes trust is chosen. We actually wrote up some trust contracts, which is great.
Yeah.
Mine was longer. Like, in other words, Marlena, I got like a year. I've got a year to build trust on this one issue. I gave her like 6 months. I'm like, yeah, 6 months. I want you. But it was beautiful because we did realize that trust is earned over time with human beings.
Yeah.
Trust is earned over time. There's things that I can do that break down trust, that erode trust, but there's things I can do that build trust. So we're in a process of building trust and all that. But I realized that the larger thing that God did, which is one thing I want to talk to you about, was I'm ready to trust again. And it's not because I don't think that people, particularly church people or otherwise, are going to hurt me or disappoint me or think the worst about me or assume, make assumptions or fill in the blanks. I'm free to love them either way. Does that make any sense? It's just, I'm ready, willing to engage that again. And I want some really close relationships where we experience unreasonable trust. Like it's so safe that we'll take risks that we can take other human beings.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where, if you get into that depth of community, you can begin to allow others to help you discern hidden sins.
Yeah.
Or what's going on in my heart, because you're giving them permission to. Now, again, it's got to be with the right people. It can't just be with everybody. Don't go on Facebook and say, "What do you think my fatal flaw is?"
Right.
Because you're going to get some. But I realize I want that again.
No, one of the significant things in what you're saying is, and this is counterintuitive, it is possible for someone to see your heart better than you do in some things.
Yeah.
So this is where inviting people in to share that, to talk about, because here's the thing, if the heart things are the most maybe dangerous and consequential, if someone sees the early signs, I've said this before, like if I'm with someone who's got medical background and they see something on my skin that looks to them, to spot to me, that you might want to get, if a doctor sees something that looks like pre-cancer or something, I want him to say something.
And you can't do that with everyone. It's like mom showing David the little rose scratch that turned out to be a flesh-eating rose thing. And he's like, I just think that's a scratch.
I don't think there's any. So that's part of the challenge. We're dealing with fallible people, but the reality is, because of what you said, and I believe it, God grows us. God helps us see in community some things we would never see in ourselves. And we have to move past the idea, I always have a better handle on my flaws than other
what's
people.
What's going on in my heart.
And what's going on in my heart.
And
because God could open up. He does something. He opens someone else's eyes to something I have. And we need to.
Here's the diabolical part of the enemy. Okay. Because we only have one enemy. I mean, and in case you're wondering, I do believe in Satan. All right. Just Jesus talked about him like a real thing. So,
yes.
But he's the accuser of the brethren. Here's what I just realized as we're talking.
Yep.
He will accuse, here's what we think we can discern our own heart. He will accuse us about the things that we know about our own heart. He doesn't dare accuse us about the things that we don't know because he wants us to grow in the darkness.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yep.
The reason I might say, oh, I know my heart. I mean, I know I'm a train wreck, it's because the enemy's always accusing me of things that I already know about myself that are problematic.
Yep.
It's the stuff that I don't know that Satan doesn't actually want me to know. We want that to grow and develop and change until it becomes a provable sin.
Right.
And then the accuser will come in and go, aha!
And this is why the enemy absolutely doesn't want us doing what James says. Confess your faults. One another, what? So you can be restored.
Exactly. It's not so that you can be condemned. It's not so you can feel bad. It's not so you can do something to make penance for it. This is something I keep going back to that's anti-gospel. It's like when someone confesses a sin and the person says, I forgive you, but then their next words are, what are you going to do to make it right? I'm like, time out. That's anti-gospel. Jesus took care of that on the cross. I can't make this right. Now, I can do my best to change behavior going forward.
Right.
I can't make that right. I can't.
And even an idea of reparation or repaying isn't even like evening the scale again.
Yes.
There can be this thing of
we're doing something going forward to repair the relationship.
or a business that was flowing in generosity and grace
Yes.
and justice, not to again to win something, not to prove anything.
But all that say, yeah. So how do we get, our counselors, we connect with them so much. We had all read a lot of similar stuff, similar age, but they talked about people in community.
This critical.
They talked about the safest place on earth, the book that we all read, the book we all did sermons on, the book that didn't change the way we did church. Could have, but they talked about marriage. Marriage should be the safest place on earth. And then what flows out of that is the potential for community, for Christ following community to be the safest place on earth. And that is where I start getting excited about being a part, creating space for the safest place on earth, something that's more an organism than an organization. It's just different, and it fits more the model, as I said, more the model of the way that Jesus did. As you go along, you're making disciples. And all that to say, a big part of Marlene and I's takeaway was learning to trust again and learning to create safe space for each other. But then it does grow out from there into creating safe space for others. Yeah. And I think that was what made Jesus so attractive. Just reading it this morning, why were sinners even coming to the party that Matthew invited them to? And they knew Jesus was going to be there. Jesus truly loved sinners. Yeah. He loved the messed up ones. Of course, the Pharisees did not. They were like, why is he? So it's so funny. The way that it's worded in Luke, it says that the Pharisees and the teachers of the law that were part of their sect. So you apparently had teachers of the law and the Sadducees, teachers of the law and the Pharisees had different theologies. Right. But they're like, why does your master? They're not asking Jesus. I've had too many encounters with Jesus where he just made them feel bad. Yeah.
We can't control him.
Right. We're not the disciples. They come to disciples. Why do you guys eat with tax collectors and sinners? And the disciples, and I think the Chosen does a great job of showing this. The disciples are like, we don't know. We're going to check with Jesus and get back to you. Because it says that Jesus answers the question. So whether he heard the conversation or the disciples came to him and said, Jesus, hey, by the way, I'm a little curious myself. Why are we hanging out with tax collectors and sinners? Why? Because that does seem, it's bad optics. Bad company corrupts good character. We all know that. Why are we doing this? And Jesus just goes, he looks both at his disciples and at the Pharisees. I think he's teaching both of them. Well, the healthy don't need it. I mean, the healthy people don't need a doctor, do they? Sick people need a doctor. I'm not come to call the righteous, right, but sinners to repentance. It's just painful. And the Pharisees are like, has done it again.
And I'm looking at that interchange, and if I'm looking at our conversation full circle.
Yeah, we are rambling a little.
Of course, that's what we do.
That's what we do. It's unscripted.
We're ramblers. The tax collectors and sinners, those were the provable sins. You could tell who the traitors were. Mm-hmm. You could tell who the prostitutes were. You could tell, like this was the known. But Jesus is pointing out the sin of the others. Now on the outside,
Roger's interesting. So the good things they were doing were obvious. Oh, you guys are taking your mint and your cumin and you're tithing 10%. You're carefully dividing that leaf into 1/10.
You're valuing the law.
Yeah.
Even if I say law, almost always talking about
your acts of righteousness, approvable, observable,
rebukable, identifiable, obvious. But Jesus gets at this, but mercy. See, a lack of mercy, a judgmentalism, arrogance, thinking you're better than, thinking that you're too good to be with those kind of people is awful. And so you have this striking two kinds of evil, the indiscernible, subtle evil of the heart, the obvious evils of cheating and prostitution and these kind of things. Jesus loved both of them. And Jesus was merciful. And again, this is just where you see this this, we don't, and here's the thing. These Pharisees, whatever, they couldn't see because they just thought sin was provable, observable, that Jesus was coming after this all the time, and he still is today. We still, the more serious, long, consequential, as you noted, that's leading actually to so many of the turns into an action kind of evil, is pride, thinking I'm better than, and hating, and greed, and coveting, and respect for persons, and judgmentalism. These are the things.
And isn't it interesting that Jesus may have been specifically speaking to the Pharisees? I tell you that if you hate your brother, it's just like murder, because they hated Jesus to the point that they finally killed him. It didn't take long to go from we hate this guy to we're going to kill this guy. Wow.
It makes me wonder then too, just thinking out loud, when you look at the American church today, and I don't want to make too broad a generalization, I'll ask the question to our listeners. Is the American church, do you think that we're focusing, even out of this last political, focusing on observable, markable, provable, dare I say, indictable kinds of wrongs, or are we focused more on heart things like arrogance and believing better stories about certain groups of people, or greed, or what are the things? I just get the feel that we, and I'm using we, including me as the church, are still filling the same pull. I think it's real easy to go after the provable sins, even in the political arena, even in the make our country great. Making our country great can be about changing this behavior, this behavior, this behavior, and this behavior. And we can have heart things going on inside us that we don't see, that are eating up the work of God in us. Anyway.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. That's another podcast.
I know we're probably,
I have no idea what time it is because we don't have the thing that's the timer.
We don't know what.
Maybe that's why we should be doing both the YouTube and this.
I love the look of this.
And can I say, and your hat, it just works.
It's some swag, baby.
It's swag, and Roger is the swag and wagon. He has blue shorts, blue hoodie, blue hat. Roger is, for the first time in his life, color matched.
Hip.
And
that's what I am.
So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Here's my slogan to finish us off with.
Happy birthday, and there's a stink bug.
Oh, good. They're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
Seriously, I think that those are from the days of the dinosaurs, right? I mean, those are absolutely.
It looks like a
vestiges of.
It looks like one of those.
They survived with the glaciers and everything. Yeah, boom.
All
we still have the.
Well, when you think about it, even if you look at like all the lizards that run around in Florida, I'm like, that looks like a small, tiny T-Rex.
Yes.
Yeah. So what were you finishing with? Was it a ditty? Was it a?
No. At some point, I thought the classic phrase. I don't know if it was Longfellow or whatever you said. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved. And I was thinking, it's better to have trusted and lost than never to have trusted. Don't give up on trust. I love this word where you're saying, I'm ready to trust again.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Trust is core to the fabric of everything. So, yes, it's better to have trusted even when you've lost. Keep trusting.
And without resting.
Was that necessary? Really?
We rhyme. It's what we do. We're poets.
You're busted.
We are the poet philosophers. You know we are. And we're good at it.